All right, welcome to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited to have what is this episode 26? That's gonna be dropping. It's just mind blowing to me. I started this journey on January 7th, but it really started for me like thinking about what I'm going to do for the new year. And I'm like, it's time for me to put some action behind some of the things I've been doing in the work. And which brings me, to my guest today, just such a wonderful guy. I have kind of followed him and some of the things he's been doing and he's been teaching me. And, I feel like I've taught him a couple things too. We're looking to probably be running against each other in a presidential race at some point. But he's just an all-out wonderful guy. And just to, you know, let me stop ranting. I'm gonna have him introduce himself.
Well, thank you for having me on this evening. I should say afternoon, but it's like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock here. This evening, Michael. My name is Tony Parsons. I'm really excited to be here. Michael and I have known each other since I think 2019 when we did Shadow Day with the National Foster Youth Institute, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, multiple times throughout this podcast today. But just a little bit about me, right? Or is there a prompting question, or can I just start talking? Sorry.
You go ahead. So because look, let me tell you guys, like me and Tony, we're talkers, and we're gonna get right into business. So I guess I asked the question. For the audience, and a little bit for myself. I know a little bit about you. Can you give us a background on your experience in care, and what did that look like, and how did that prompt you to get into your field?
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually kind of an interesting story. I like to say I was born into the foster care system because that's really what happened. As I understand it, my birth mother came into the hospital complaining of stomach pains because this was during the height of the cocaine and crack epidemic, especially in Metro Detroit, specifically Detroit, where I was born. And so she came into the hospital complaining of a stomach ache, and about 12 hours later, I made my grand debut into the world. It was, as I understand it, she was so far off on drugs, she didn't even know she was pregnant at all, which, I guess is not necessarily uncommon when you're on drugs. So, but within 12 hours of my birth, she left the hospital. There was no real record, no real trace. From what I understand, she did write her name on the birth certificate, but the address that she gave and like the name that she wrote originally for me were just two side streets that she was aware of that were around the hospital. It was Hutzel Women's Hospital in Detroit, which I think is actually still there. And so I was in foster care right from the get-go. Now, I was very fortunate, even though I was born prematurely. I think I'm still overall very fortunate because my first placement in care would go on to be my forever family. I was placed, well, they found a home for me at 10 days old. I wasn't like allowed to leave the hospital for a few more weeks because I was premature. And so my lungs were fully formed, and that's probably important before you take someone home, is that they can breathe on their own. Just maybe. And so I was very fortunate though that first placement would go on to my forever family. It did take them about 3 years to finalize the adoption because when you're abandoned, it does just take a lot more like legal oversight, and you can do due diligence to find family, all that good stuff, But I was unique though because I was adopted into a family that had already adopted 3 other children. And so I was the youngest of the group, which was kind of fun growing up as the baby, if you will. But I was also the only Black child they had at the time. But I was the 6th child that they had altogether. My father was actually married 3 times, and his first wife, he had 2 biological children. So they're my very eldest siblings. And then he married the person who I consider to be my mom, the one that adopted me with him. And they had 4 of us, so adopted 4 children, 3 before me and then me in 1994 when I was placed. They didn't adopt me until 1997. And then, unfortunately, my adopted mother passed away in 2005. But my dad remarried my mom's best friend, who was, interestingly enough, also an adoptive parent. She adopted 12 kids as a single mother. And the funny thing is, she was my foster care caseworker. So that's how my family met her. And originally I was supposed to be placed with her because at first they had a hard time finding a placement for me. And so she was going to take me home, and then the agency called and said, we have a 2-parent household, I can give it to him. And so the running joke is now that she's my stepmom, she's like, haha, you became my kid anyway, which is really cool. And so when my dad remarried her, that was 12 kids plus his 6, that was 18. And then since they were married in 2006, they went on to adopt or have legal guardianship of 6 more children, which gets us to the grand total of 24 children in my family, 22 of us who have spent time in child welfare. And so, doing this kind of work that I do now as the federal policy specialist for youth villages, doing that work legislatively, administratively, kind of doing that advocacy day in and day out, to me, it's not necessarily a job. It's kind of my life's work. Like everything that I have lived, everything that my family has gone through influences why I do this work, how I do this work, and why I continue to do this work. Because this work is hard work, right? We've lived through a pandemic, and yes, we made some great strides for foster care for foster care and for foster youth. During that time, this work is really hard. It's emotionally taxing, but I do this because to me, it's not a job. It's literally my life's work. I can't think of doing anything else. I don't think I know how to do anything else.
Right.
So.
Wow, man. So dare I say it, you was born into resiliency and perseverance. Like right out the gate, like you had to look, I gotta get it together, And thankfully enough, you had those supports, You had those supports. That doesn't mean that, along the way, barriers didn't come and you didn't have to fight different battles and stuff like that. But from what I'm hearing, you learned that this is what you were meant to do. This is your calling. This is what your purpose is for. And this is the journey that you're deciding to take on. So I kind of want to touch on that. Now we have a little bit of that background of the advocacy and how did that all became to be? Like, what was that transition? So if you can start from like college on up for the audience.
Sure. Yeah. So my first advocacy role or experience, I guess, and really what got the ball rolling would have been in 2014 when I was selected as an intern with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. So every year they have their foster youth internship, and they typically don't take that many younger children. We're adults. I was 20 at the time, but I was the youngest one in my class, and so talk about being intimidated. I was like, I'm like the only 20-year-old here. Like, I don't know if they just want to give me a chance. I thought I was great, but I was selected over 100 applicants had applied. I went through all the rounds of interview, and they're like, yes, we are going to pay for you to come to DC, intern on Capitol Hill on foster care legislation, like working in offices that can have influence. And for those of you who are politically savvy, I was with the Committee on Ways and Means, and that is the sole House congressional committee that has jurisdiction over foster care. I mean, in terms of internships, you really can't do much better if you want to do foster care legislation. So I was very fortunate. But the internship also allowed me to do policy reporting too. So I actually wrote and published a policy report full of detailed recommendations, like change these laws, add these words, right? Sort of thing, like very detailed blueprint for Congress to say, like, this is what I think needs to be done. And at the time, it was very much trying to find the right role for foster parents in the process, because I do think there's a certain situations where foster parents aren't given the kind of legal standing they should have to advocate for the children that's in their care, right? Especially if they've stayed there for a long time. And that's not to say I'm against reunification. I'm not. Like, I work for youth villages. My whole goal now is to prevent children from entering the foster care system in the first place. And when they do, making sure they reunify as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, right? Like, I've definitely undergone an advocacy shift. And my approach to what I think child welfare needs to be doing has changed, right? That's the nice thing about doing advocacy is you can learn, you can grow, you can adapt, and you can find outlets and avenues to fit that. But so that's where it started, was with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. I was only a sophomore in college at that time, so I still had 2 more years to complete. But I can say that definitely changed the trajectory of how I completed college. I went back and then wrote my undergraduate thesis on foster care legislation, and looking at like how have we as a country approached these issues, and how does that look differently under Republicans and Democratic presidents, Republicans and Democrats in Congress, and different pieces of legislation that came out as those different things happened. And it was called Framing Foster Care, How the Political Party Prepped to Save Our System was the title of my thesis. And I'm really glad I got highest honors on that, which means it was very rigorously reviewed, and my professors were like, this is great, right? So that's how I kind of got started. In 2016, I was kind of out of it. Like, I was doing more political work because like I just graduated. I'm like, let's work on election. Let's go see what we can do. But even my rationale for working on the Clinton campaign is because she has an outstanding record on foster youth work, right? When she joined the Senate in the early part of the 2000s, she was originally part of the Senate Foster Youth Caucus, right? Like, I resonate with that. I want to be on a campaign for someone who understands the issues that we face. And I'm not saying she was fantastic on it, but at least she was a politician who understood that there are unique issues that foster youth face.
Right.
But I kind of stepped away from advocacy after that. I was like, the election's over, we didn't win, but I still want to do something in my community that lifts up people I care about. So I turned to doing education work. I was an academic advisor and educator for about 2 years. And then I actually went to work with the Michigan College Access Network doing advocacy around higher education for low-income first-generation students of color, which typically are also foster youth in a lot of cases. And I got to work very closely with the wonderful Maddie Day, if you're familiar with who that is. I'm sure you know Maddie. Love her to death. We got to do a lot of great work together.
Wonderful.
Absolutely wonderful. I still get to do a lot of work with her in my new role, but she was the chair of the Michigan College Access Network. She wasn't chair at that time, but she was on the board. So we did a lot of work together in the advocacy space as well. And then in 2019, late 2019, November 2019, it was actually the day before Thanksgiving, 2019, Youth Villages scooped me up. They said, essentially, it's like, we know what you can do. We believe that you can do it well, and we believe that you should be doing it with us. And I was like, say less. Any excuse to go back to DC was fantastic, but to get to do it with foster youth issues, with people who have dedicated their lives to this work and have data-driven results, that was huge for me. Like, I love advocacy, but I also love data. I think that we need to be doing things that work, that that have impact, that will get done. And Youth Village just has that track record. And so getting to be originally their federal policy associate and now their specialist has really allowed me to combine my love for data, getting things done, and getting to advocate and lift up youth voices along the way. And so I think, throughout my career, I've just taken on more. But again, it's never felt like work to me. It's felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing because this is the only thing I know how to do because this is the life I have lived. So I'm really glad I get to do this work. I'm glad I get to still be in DC and really kind of see, and be, to quote Hamilton, I'm really glad I get to be in the room where it happened. When this is coming, because it's not just my voice I'm taking into the room, it's the voice of my brothers and sisters in care. Because Michael, we talk from time to time. I talk to a lot of our colleagues from time to time, right in the field, our lived experience colleagues. And you guys impact me way more than I think you realize, because I know that, yes, I'm physically in the room, but I am surrounded by so many others whose lives have touched mine, whose shoulders I've stepped on to get here, and who are lifting me up. So, yes, it's me in the room, but I think it's all of us in spirit.
Definitely. And so one of the quotes I live by is, if there's no more chairs in the room, you pull up your own chair to the table and so forth. And also just being the change that you want to see and the hope that you want to see. Like, you can't wait on hope. You can't wait on people to speak up on the change. Like, if you know it, you feel it, be that advocate, and that's where I kind of grew up out of the residentials and out of the, systems that I was a part of, is that there was no real hope for change. There was no real person that was like, okay, this is going wrong, and I saw that and I visualized that and kind of going off of, your story, your experience, I had to be that person, especially, being in residential facilities and stuff like that. Like, there was many people that just let stuff happen to them in these places. And by me, I wasn't the person by that time. I was like, hey, you ain't about to just get me like this, in the better saying of, Medea, you got to get the goddess.
Hey, that's right.
No, but in a real sense, like, I was like, I need to get ahead of this. People aren't going to say one thing about me or, speak upon me or make a policy about me, and they haven't heard from me. You're not allowed to take my narrative and try to use it for this, and you haven't actually spoken to me. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I got behind and I wanted to be a part of the Enterprise Shadow Day, because of the foster youth voices. That was a very powerful thing to me, because wow, our voices, we get invited, we get told to do this, and there's many different things I can speak on upon this, not getting paid, for the work that you're doing, or you being propped up. This is actually a pure initiative to uplift foster youth voices.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one shoe. It was foster youth voices from kinship,
Yeah.
guardianship,
And across the
yeah,
country, right? Like
right.
Saturday was that was one of the greatest things about Saturday was like I met people from all 50 states. And I mean, we know like we experienced care in Michigan, but it's like, wow, this what
Mhm.
happens in California, this happens in Alaska, this happens
Definitely.
in Texas, right? Like, yeah, there's shared experiences, but I think we each have something so unique. And yeah, I absolutely love that Saturday really, and FYI more generally, I do still get to work with them in DC, but more generally, I love the fact that like they are youth driven, right? Almost
Mhm.
everyone on their leadership team is a former foster youth, and I think that matters, right? And that's hard to come by. I respect that. That's very difficult to do. But I'm really glad that Congressman Karen Bass, has really had that impact on them to say like this is how we're going to do our organizational leadership. And I can fully say I would not be at Youth Villages had it not been for Saturday. I mean, my
Mhm.
old boss, who she's left the workforce to raise her family, which I think is beautiful if you can do that. But we sat down together at a briefing during Saturday, exchanged business cards, and just never stopped talking. I mean, that's
Mhm.
literally how I got the job. She's like, "Wow, you're really smart. I would love for you to be on my team." We kept talking, and she said, "Come, the job's yours if you want it." And that's one thing I really think Saturday is unique in that sense is they give you your platform to shine because they understand that it's
Mhm.
your voice, and
Definitely.
that's who needs to be speaking. It's us who should be speaking. Um,
Definitely.
and you touched on something that's really interesting. Is like for a long time, and in some parts of the country, I think we still have them. Is they will take a young person's experience and they'll tokenize it. They'll put you in the room, but you won't say a word, right? Or they'll take your narrative, which could be one thing, and they'll twist it so it sounds like it's the thing they're doing, right? I think we're just now getting to a space where it's like, why are we telling these people they have a voice? Like, we need to move away from giving foster youth a voice to amplifying the voice they already have.
Mhm.
And I'm really fortunate that Youth Villages like has embraced that, and they have for a long time.
Mhm.
Because I never have felt in a situation where I was being tokenized, and like now I get to bring others along with that journey. It's like, hey guys, like, what can I do to amplify your voice? I'm not telling you what your voice is. I'm not saying you got to find it.
Mhm.
I'm saying I recognize that you have it. What can I do so I can shut up so you can be louder, right? And when we have a system that works like that, we can only get better, I think. And I love that we're in this intersectional place too, where we're talking about like what is the experience for Black and brown boys and girls
Definitely.
in the foster care system, because I think it is very different than our peers, for better or for worse. And I'm glad that we're having that discussion because I don't think that we can make meaningful reform if we don't acknowledge the harm that it has been done and unfortunately continues to be done to Black and brown children and families in the foster care system.
Definitely. Definitely. And I'm, I want to, kind of, be provide a platform to continue that conversation, because I don't want us to get stuck in a place which tends to happen. And you can kind of you probably can bounce right up to we get stuck in a place when the opportunity knocks for a good policy driven atmosphere, we take it, in this field of advocacy, in the child welfare field. COVID has created the perfect atmosphere for policy work and legislation surrounding child welfare, because people are asking questions about, well, what can we do better about this? Or, what is messing up in this area? And how can we reform it and make it better? So COVID has done that, but also, what I don't want to happen is when we get to a place of okay, that we stop talking about it, and I hope I don't make nobody mad, but we tend to do this after Black History Month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We tend to do this, after we celebrate national International Women's Day. We these are just a couple that I've seen recently because they just passed. Like
Right.
we promoted up, well, this is happening to Black people. This is happening to youth that are in care that are Black and brown. This is what is happening to women not getting paid and all these different things and stuff like that. Or during Pride season, this is what's happening to LGBTQ and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But then after the conversation stops, the momentum fades. And I will admit, it's it's like adrenaline when you're an advocate and you go somewhere and you're surrounded by a lot of advocates and you do some work and stuff like that. I would say like Enterprise Shadow Day. It's like a bit like you meet all the people, like we working together, like this is what we doing. When I got back home, I was like, I want to feel like this every day. What can I do to make the people around me and myself feel like this every day? And that's when I made that decision. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I had already at that time worked in 2 juvenile facilities, worked for 3 residential facilities, had been on my state board doing advocacy work federally, locally, and stuff like that before then. So I had that feeling, but it always faded because I always went to something that I felt personally wasn't what God had for me. You know? But when I finally took that initiative, kind of like what you said, like this, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. That doesn't mean that it's going to always be easy. And this is something that I say to some of my clients and people that I mentor, that sacrifice always comes before the blessing, you know? And the thing is, we think of sacrifice as always going to be something negative. You know, and I use this example because some of my clients smoke. You know, what if the sacrifice is all you got to do is stop smoking to get a good salary, a 401k, you know, health insurance and stuff like that? What if that's the only thing? Not saying that you like, you know, because we're in a new age. Not saying you got to do it forever, but just to get in the door. What if that's the sacrifice you got to make? Are you willing to make that? You know, and that's something I realized being homeless, living on the street, being in a homeless shelter. Like, maybe it was meant for me to come back to this basics, the basics of the basics, and look at some of the people who had settled in this place of homelessness, and look at some of the people who had made mistakes. Like, I met a wonderful guy that he worked for a major car company, had 3 degrees, had 2 masters, and an associate's. And drugs, and you know, took him away from his job, his family, and everything. And simplest thing, like I saw this man be as happy as he could be. He ended up getting a job. Working at a local store, pushing carts, and then packing hot dogs. And he was just smiling. He was just happy. He was just happy because like he had realized a certain part of his life. And I think about those moments. And I'm gonna say another piece. I remember being homeless in a shelter, and I remember I always dressed like I like success, pretty much. You know, I had a business kind of trench coat, either a polo and some slacks and some dress shoes. And I always had my book bag because I was in college. I had ended up getting back into school. And I remember walking, because I was homeless in Flint, walking to the bus terminal every day. I would see people who were in the same room, because I stayed the night in this big room full of bunk beds where there was like a whole bunch of men, you know, and we all slept in the same room. And these people woke up with me, brushed their teeth beside me. By the time I got outside and I was dressed how I was dressed, I remember several of them coming up to me like, "Hey man, can I get $1?" and stuff like that. They could not recognize that I was the same person, you know, sitting right next to them. But I share those experiences because us as a people have to do better. You know, I feel like we are in a state of a wake-up call. You know, not only a pandemic, not only an epidemic and a crisis between our child welfare systems and our system as a whole. We are in a place where we need to wake up. You know,
I mean, listen, it's not that we wake up. We are literally on fire right now, and I think that the child welfare system, more generally, let's take it off real quick. The community system has been broken. Right? Because it used to be like when our parents were children, right? Oh, Johnny got his leg broken. Well, it wasn't incumbent just on mom, right? The 2 neighbors knew about it. You know, the neighbor across the street knew about it. And some adults who had the capacity could help you, right? In the last 30, 40 years, that has completely gone away. And with that, we've seen those repercussions in school, right? School, look how schools get funded. Look how schools are. Look at the test scores we're turning out. With child welfare, we've always been in a broken system. I think that 2020 was the biggest wake up call we ever got to say, like, listen, we can no longer afford, not just as a country, but from a moral perspective, we need to do the right thing, even if it hurts sometimes perspective. Right. Like, we can't keep doing this. Like, we fundamentally cannot. And I think Family First was great in 2018 when it was passed, say, like, we're going to go upstream, we're going to have prevention. Let's not have kids go into the child welfare system and the federal government pay for it. I think that's great. But so much more is needed. I don't want a child welfare system. I want a community welfare system, right? Where if communities are suffering, there are supports in place. Because if we get that right, then children don't leave their home. Children don't have to leave their community. And when communities are healthy, the entire country can only be better. And the pandemic, as much as it sucked, and like I'll be the first one to say I hate this pandemic. My dad died in the early days of the pandemic. It absolutely blows. But I am very thankful that it finally forced America to have a reckoning on how we deal with children in this country, foster youth or not, how we deal with education, how we deal with elderly people, how we deal with workers, right? It forced us to look at the very fundamental pieces of our society that we kind of just don't think about sometimes and say, oh, maybe we don't do this the right way. And now that we're coming out of the pandemic, if you can say that, I'm not sure if we really ever will, but now that we're moving on, I guess, from this pandemic, I don't know. It's not over until
pretty much we just moving on, like, dialing it down a little bit,
I mean, listen, the best cure for COVID is the midterm elections. Okay, everyone's like, oh, what are you talking about? But I'm glad that as we are transitioning back to whatever our new normal is going to be, we're saying we can do that, but have these improvements that we made in the pandemic. And I think that's important. And I think that, the ease of access that we have to our legislators, to people in the administration, both at the federal, state, and local level, that's not going away. I think that has been a huge benefit. Is it like you and I can be 9 hours away, because I'm in DC, about 9 hours from Michigan, and we can have this conversation. In the past, we would never have thought to do that, right? And I think that's a huge benefit. I think that's great. But I think that the issues that have been exposed, especially on race, children, education, what have you, they are not going away until they get solved. They just fundamentally won't. And do I think we'll ever solve them completely? No. But do I think we can make progress? Yes. Because it's going to take people like you and I and our friends, right? Like people like Maddie Day, who we both know, or Carrie, or Sixto at Think of Us, or, Rebecca at NFYI, like whatever. It's going to take all of us to have these tough conversations, specifically around child welfare, disagree on how we fix it, but keep working at it because we know it's the right thing to do. And to the point that you raised earlier, I think we have Black History Month, we have International Women's Day, right? We have all of these very symbolic things that are super important. I'm glad that we have them. But as soon as it's over, we don't talk about it anymore. We won't talk about Black History Month until February of 2023. Right? We won't talk about International Women's Day until March 9th, 2023, or 8th, I think. Right? But it can't be like that. That's not how the world works. There's still Black oppression, and there's still Black history makers every day, even if it's not February, right? Women are important every day, even if it's not International Women's Day. Foster youth matter, even if it's not National Foster Care Awareness Month. I know it's hard to be engaged and be involved. I get that. There's a million things we have going on in our life. But if we can really just focus, even for 1 year, on solving one of those things. I mean, just think of how much progress we could make. I mean, if we focus, look at COVID, for example. The entire world focused on making a vaccine for COVID, and we did it in a year. I mean, we can do great things. Yeah, it's hard. I get that. But we can do it if we all stay focused. And I'm so upset that it took a pandemic for us to get there. But I'm so glad we finally realized that we can.
It's funny, it took a year to, do that. And I just think what's it happened all these other years? And people just been sitting at their desk with paper stacked up, I think I'm going to just do this Friday. I feel like that's what has been happening in our government, and not even just our federal government, our local, stuff like that. We pass things off, we buy time and stuff like that, and it's the people who suffer.
Yep.
I use this analogy, in speaking, on this podcast, is that we're a village. We're one big village. It's not just one person in this world. Like, like I get we all come here, technically not ourselves, but not really, but if we, whether you're this religion, that religion, whichever, we literally all affect each other. I can go meet somebody today, on the street, don't really know them, say something to them, that's going to pass on to somebody else. That's going to pass on to somebody else and somebody else. Eventually, it's going to end up on the whole other side of the globe. What I said to that person, it don't even got to be much. So when I think about even just this pandemic, and I think about some of the things that we strive and advocate about, it literally just takes you going out there and just having a conversation. And even if you ain't even got to walk outside, you got kids, you got family. The dialogue and the conversation can start at home in your own living room. It can start on the phone. It can start via Zoom, FaceTime, Snapchat, Facebook. Like all these, we have advanced, so you don't gotta just send a pigeon no more. You ain't even gotta put a stamp, on the letter. Like it's so many different ways that these conversations can be started, and it's just we're in a place where we need the dialogue. We need the conversation. We not gonna agree. Like to go into this thinking that, oh yeah, we're just gonna agree about that does not work. That does not work. There is a natural balance to agreeing and disagreeing. But eventually, with everybody playing fair on one agenda, you come to a natural conclusion. I believe it's happened throughout history,
Yeah, but I mean, we also need to learn to disagree without being disagreeable. I think we are in a place, not like as a country, I think we're in a place that if I disagree with you, well, it's no longer, oh, we can disagree, let's move on to like the 10 things, if, for example, there's 10 things that we're talking about and I disagree with one of them, the odds are you're going to demonize it because over one thing, even though I agree with 90% of what you just said, because I disagree with that 10%, oh, I'm a bad person, you're going to call my mother everything you can think of, and like you're going to try to ruin my political career, like my life, right? Because of that one thing. That is where America has gone. And that is counterproductive to everything I think America stands for, right? America is for everybody. I don't care who you love, what you look like, who you worship or don't worship, where you believe, whatever. I don't care. Like, I can disagree with how you want to live your life as long as it's not hurting other people, right? If you're hurting other people, that's a whole nother thing. And like we need to address that because people shouldn't hurt other people. I wish we all got that. But it's like we can disagree and still make great progress. But as soon as disagreement happens, people want to walk away. And it's not that they want to walk away to cool it down. I get that. Take some time, take a breather, go have some ice cream, whatever you need to do to relax. No, it's like you're going to walk away and you're going to go trash me on Twitter. You're going to do everything you can so that way I'm now discredited. And I don't understand that. I just don't fundamentally understand that. And like, it doesn't happen a ton in child welfare, but it does happen. You'll see groups that don't work with each other. You'll see groups that have very different philosophies who can work together. And it's like, if we all remember why we do this work, whatever that work is, education, foster care, medicine, I don't care what it is. If you remember why you're doing it, I should still be able to disagree with you and say we all are on the same team. We just have different approaches to how we get to where we think we need to go. And I'm tired that our legislators can't see that because they're unfortunately the ones at the state, local, and federal level who get to have that kind of sway over whatever our system looks like, and not just system, rather our society, right? They set the rules. And I just think America would be a happier place if we could learn to disagree without being disagreeable. It's civics 101. Not everyone agrees with you. Great. Right. Welcome to living in America. And right. Your rights end where my body begins,
Definitely. And this brings me to kind of just speaking on that, agreeing and being agreeing and disagreeing and being okay. I'm pretty sure most of you guys is listening, but have heard this or seen it. Some of you guys aren't really political, so this will probably be you guys first real time hearing it. But the passing from the Senate of making lynching a hate crime.
Yeah.
Like I'm just being real with you. Like Black people aren't the only people that were lynched.
Right.
Like that. Like so across the board, everybody disagrees that people like we should not lynch people. I mean, everyone agrees. I'm sorry, I said disagree. Everyone agrees that we should not lynch people. Why has it taken so many years to make it like it is illegal to lynch people?
It's insane.
It's a hate crime to lynch somebody.
Yeah, and like this isn't the first time. Like they tried this like multiple times before. Like, and that's my problem. It's like great that it happened. But let's not forget that there were people who objected to that, and I was like, oh, you're pro lynching, okay? Well, and like you might not be, but you objecting to passing it, I was like that makes everyone think that you're pro lynching.
Because like what do I supposed to think?
Right.
What like you leave it, it's like you check every box and you just leave it open. So you leaving it to the people's perception to just wonder. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and I use that because I'm like, that's a prime example of what is happening in society. We all agree that something is wrong. Well, at least I hope we all agree. Because we have the perception that Black people were the only people that were lynched, and that this was the only tactic that was used. Like this stuff, the same tactics that was used in slavery had been used during Holocaust times, and other times in history and stuff like that. So this is nothing new. But we just try to categorize it, and make it acceptable, and I'm just at a place, like I said, I'm probably make some people mad, where it's not acceptable. So I just, I wanted to bring that up to kind of just, kind of circle back around. Our child welfare system was built with racist intentions. And I was talking with one of my guests named Matthew. He's a third generation child welfare social worker, and he's experienced, working in facilities, doing all this other stuff and stuff like that. And one of the things he said is like, excuse me, we can't even begin to try to like make a difference at that level, not even at like the legislature house, but at that level within that system, without taking a look at that system and rebuilding it.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is built wrong, like it's built with the intention to target.
Yes. Well, if you look at the original charter for the Children's Bureau, right, which came out of a conference, if you got the history buff to me, it came out of the White House Conference on Children, and it happened in 1909 under, don't tell me, Taft? Yes, had to be Taft, because the next one would have been Wilson. Under Taft, and that conference yielded the creation of the Children's Bureau. It took about 4 years because they build a building, whatever. It's like 900, whatever. In the original charter of the Children's Bureau, it said it is to surveil families. I'm sorry, but if the Children's Bureau, which its full thing was to look after children in the United States, you said in 1913 that you needed to surveil families. Congratulations, 110-ish years later, that's what they do. Our system is built to surveil families, and when you're looking for bad things, you're going to find them, whether they're there or not. And 1913's America, racism was embedded into the system. And I can go on a full diatribe, and I won't bore the listeners with that. But like, I can point to you to legislation that, unfortunately, and I'm not impugning the people who made the legislation. I want to believe that every member of Congress and every president and what have you, I want to believe they thought they were doing what's best for children, and they very well could have been. But systematic and systemic racism is still embedded in how America functions, our institutions, and child welfare is not immune to that. That is where we are. Unfortunately, that is where we are. Even the best intentions cannot deliver in the right way sometimes because of the systemic and systematic racism that is built into the very bedrock of how we deliver services in this country. And this almost bred hatred of the Black family, in my opinion. I think there is a systematic fear of minority families. And I don't like Candace Owens. I am not a Republican. I'm just not. Like, that's whatever. I don't care if you are, that's fine. Don't be a MAGA Republican, but like, that's fine. You're rational, I can work with you. but say that to say, I don't agree with Canada with that almost anything. But I will say that America, I agree with her on this. America has done the best job of destroying the Black family that I have ever seen. I swear, they get rid of our male figures like that. They break up mothers and fathers like that. I mean, look at the drug war in the 80s. That alone put so many children into foster care. And for what?
Started generational foster care. If
Yeah.
I can say, it's a generational thing, right? You know, because that damage and that trauma that affected from my parent becoming a drug dealer, you know, and me not really having nobody to depend on has affected mountains of family members, and it's still cycling through. We don't realize how one turn of event affects generations to come.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah. And I hate that, because the prevailing thought for some reason is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're not your parents. You're not this. You're not that. Yeah, you're right. I'm not my parents. But damn, does it make it difficult when I don't have a parent there to raise me. Mm-hmm. And like when I do go into foster care, wow, you federal government, state government, local government are my parent, and y'all do a shit job at raising us. And so people who I believe have been in foster care, you know, like, and again, I think I'm a lucky one. I did have a family, and I was adopted, and I did have those supports growing up. And so I'm very thankful to have those things. But I see the people who don't have that, who are super successful, and I don't think they're successful because they're in foster care. I think they're successful in spite of foster care. I think they're successful in spite of the bad things that have happened to them. But do I believe people can pull themselves by the bootstraps? No. Everybody who's ever gotten into a place of any modicum of power, any success, there's always been people who have helped them. I'm not saying it was a handout, it could have been a hand up, but it was help. And so this narrative that we in this country seem to espouse or believe that you can just work your way out of poverty, you can work your way out of a shitty situation, it's not how that happens. It just functionally is not. Not especially when our legislative, like our system, our policing system, our court system, our every interaction system, education system, whatever, is built against non-whites. And I'm not, again, my parents are white. Most of my siblings are white. I love them. They're not bad people. I'm not saying white people are bad. Let me be clear. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that the institutions that run America and dictate American life were built for you. They were not built for us. They just simply were not. And those of us who are trying to change it, God bless our souls, because it is demoralizing work sometimes. Because now we're not just trying to change laws and systems, we're trying to change hearts and minds. And it's hard when you don't even realize that your heart and mind need to be changed.
Definitely. I feel like we can go on, for days, on so many different topics, because, the topics itself have categories under those topics, but I just want to say I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability by sharing your story, but also sharing your passion and advocacy and your expertise along this journey. I just have a couple more questions for you as we get towards the end of this episode. But as you know, well around in the foster care community, that there's a lot of stigmas and labels that face mental health. And with that, COVID did a number in highlighting the mental health instability with our, population. So I've been asking everyone that's been on my podcast this question, and been getting different answers. So I'm kind of interested. What was your experience with mental health? Yourself throughout COVID, and how did you manage and handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I can be completely honest. Like, my mental health has always had issues. Not ashamed to say I spent some time in a psychiatric institution. Not ashamed to say I used to be on antidepressants. Not ashamed to say I tried to take my own life. I'm not ashamed to say I used to be a cutter. Right? All of those things are true about me. It didn't bother me to say that. During COVID, yeah, it got worse. I had just moved to a new city. Right? I moved to DC in January 2020, and by April it shut down. April 8th, 2020, I lost my dad, and not one of his family, not one of his children, not even his wife could be in the room to be with him as he passed. So there's always that piece of, I never really I got to say goodbye. We talked on the phone, but I don't think I got the goodbye I wanted. I don't think it was the way that he wanted to go. Right? It was early COVID. There was nothing to do. Mm-hmm. So my mental health definitely deteriorated, but I am one of those people who I'm very good at compartmentalizing things. So I know, like, I would schedule times where I could just be in my feelings and feel sad, because I couldn't let that consume me. Because I mean, you're isolated already. I'm not really going to be in that space where I'm isolated and like my brain, whatever. I also, I also work out a lot. So even though the gyms were closed, I still tried to be active and move and try to get some endorphins into me. Uh,
Hmm.
but I'm very also fortunate that I have a large family, right? That we could all be there for each other. And I have a lot of friends who are like my family, who they understood how this feels, who have had their own mental health struggles. So I never truly felt like I was alone, even though I was in a city by myself. And I'm very fortunate that all of my coworkers at Youth Villages, they knew what happened to my dad and they all reached out. So again, I never felt like I was alone, whether it was personal or professional. I always felt that I had somebody who was willing to listen. Um, but it was hard, definitely hard. And coming out of COVID, if we want to say that, moving on, I guess, from COVID, I prioritize my mental health, right? Like I take time away from my laptop when I need it. And I'm very proud to say that as of this upcoming Monday, the 14th, I think, Pi Day, I'll be back in therapy officially. And I'm really excited to have that. Just to have someone to talk to about some of these things. And they specialize in working with current and former foster youth. So we can work through some of that, some of those deeper rooted issues I don't think I ever got, closure for, as well as addressing some of the newer things that have come up in my life.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Um, you know, Once again, I would say, like, it's important to me to be able to bring real life people with real life experiences, not just professionals, but people who are still working towards their own stability within their experience. So, one of the biggest reasons why I developed this show is to be able to show that people are, people who are in their professions, are in their arenas and communities of career, whichever, had to go through certain things to get there and continue to go through certain things. But also, there's a big population of us that are still going through things and are okay, but we still going through things. And I wanted to showcase and give a place where both sides of that coin can share their truth and their experience. That's one of the biggest purposes of this podcast. Um, my next and final question is, um, what's next for you?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things I'd argue. So I just celebrated two years and 3 months with Youth Villages. So definitely continuing to grow there and kind of just continue to learn a lot. That's one thing I really enjoy about working with Youth Villages. I'm never not learning, whether it's policy, whether it's how we work with states. Like I'm always just learning something new about how the world of child welfare works, and so I'm very fortunate that I get to do that. And so I look forward to continuing there and hitting a lot more work related goals that I have for myself this year. A lot of good things I think coming up. Outside of work, I am planning to go back to school. One of the things that Youth Villages does is they really want staff to take that time and go to school if that's what they want to do, and so they'll pay for part of my education. So we finally settled on the degree I want to go get. I want to go get my master's of public administration, and I don't think I would have gotten that insight had we not had this pandemic, had I not gotten to do this advocacy work with Youth Villages and with just the larger foster youth coalition as well. Because what it's shown me is like we can write good policy and we can implement good policy, but we also need to be able to administer good programs. And so, I learned from my coworkers who do some more of that programmatic work. It's like, oh, this is how we do programming, right? This is cool, and something that just fascinates me. Um, and I know I'm talking about them a lot, but I absolutely love my team because they do it, right? That's the work they do. And I've gotten to see some of that. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. You get to like come
Mhm.
up with spreadsheets and whatever. So I want to go with a master's of public administration because especially looking at it from the policy piece, my background is in public policy. That's my bachelor's degree. But if we can't evaluate policy, if we can't implement policy, we can't go back then to say we need to continue to do this, right? Like we need that evaluation piece and faithful administration. And so I want to make sure I'm doing my part to ensure that that happens so we can continue to write good policy, right? Good administration goes hand in hand with good policy. And so I think that's my next step. And so now we're just going to start, working on those applications, those essays, getting together the money to apply. But that's my goal for the rest of 2022 is to kind of get myself set up to go back to school. And I also look forward to kind of pursuing some personal relationships that are of interest to me. I'm also a consultant, so I'm excited to continue to grow my consultancy and just keep working on, on issues that are near and dear to my heart, child welfare and non, and just continuing to live the best life I can. I got a goddaughter that I'm hoping I can spend some more time with in Michigan, so I'm hoping I can do that. I got a nephew on the way, and I got a lot of nephews and nieces that I want to spend some time with. So I think now that the pandemic is kind of moving past, I'm definitely excited to really be the uncle, the brother, and the son that I don't think I got to really be the last 2 years. And so hoping I can do all of those things: school, work, family, and maybe just maybe get a girlfriend. And you know, because I'm 28. You can see I'm bald. I'm 28, and if I don't lock one down now, it's over. I only got a couple good years left, so got to find my first lady. And I would say probably in my mid 30s, we'll start that political career. So you better start practicing your debate skills, Michael, because I am not holding back.
Oh man, well, you know, it has been an honor. It has been an honor, you know. Man, as you guys can probably hear through listening to this, you know, Tony, you know, is just a wonderful guy. You know, whenever we get on the phone, we're always, did you see what happened? Because like, I know, like, he's like that person I can go to about policy and politics and stuff like that. And we just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, you know, like everybody got their sports people they call on to talk about what happened. Like, Tony is the one person, like, we hop on any call and we probably be doing something. And this doesn't take away from our professionalism. We'll probably be doing something really important on the call. I will message him on a separate private Zoom to be like, hey, bro, did you see what happened? You know? But I love it because, you know, I did a recent podcast. I was telling people, like, I'm in a place where I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have that community aging out. Like, you know, some people might have, you know, I'm still working on that. So it's important for me to connect and continue those networking and building those relationships through my alumni brothers and sisters. That's truly, like, if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would be today. You know, I honestly speak to that. That's my truth. You know, I've been able to reunify and build better relationships with my birth family and stuff like that, and have some hard conversations. But there's still a lot of work that needs to happen there. You know, and I've been really held down by, you know, my alumni community, and it's just some very amazing people. So I just want to say, you know, I appreciate you, you know, and all that you've offered me. It's been an honor. My last thing, you know, for you is more so a statement that you can give to our listeners and, you know, alumni brothers and sisters of CARE. You know, what advice and tidbits do you have for, you know, the listeners today?
Yeah, first, Michael, thank you so much for having me on this evening. I don't think I could have asked for something more fun to do, kind of to end my work week and start my weekend, just kind of connecting with a brother and talking about stuff that we know a lot about that we could spend days talking about. So yeah. Thanks for having me on. And you know, thanks for trying to keep me on track to get this to an hour or so. I'm sure that's not an easy task. But if there are a couple things I'd leave, you know, with our listeners, is first, to any current former foster youth that is out there that wants to do advocacy, you have a voice. Do not let someone tell you they're going to give you a voice. Do not let anybody take that away from you. You have a voice, and everything you say is important, and we should be listening. Because if this pandemic has shown us anything, it shows us that when we all speak together and say, you're not going to take my voice away, and we all get together and we say, this is important, the world, listen, we made things happen. We got $400 million. That's not an insignificant amount of money. And we couldn't have done that if foster youth didn't say this is important, and the adults who support them gave them the platform to be supported, right? I would say that we can do so many great things. So advocacy is not, it's hard, okay? It's hard, and it's an uphill battle most days. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. But your voice matters, and getting into advocacy isn't as difficult as you think. Find issues that you care about, whether they're foster youth issues or whatever they are. Find an issue you care about and believe in your heart of hearts that's important. And if you keep doing that, no matter how many days it takes, you'll be successful. You will have setbacks, but you'll be more successful often than not. And I think to kind of sum it up, I'll leave you with a quote. It's a quote that I kind of go by a lot. And I was thinking about it a lot today. Just having like a day of gratitude, I think, really. I woke up this morning in a good mood. My pre-workout hit just right at 5 a.m. at the gym. It was chef's kiss. It was beautiful. but it's by President Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, and he once said, "Far and away, the best opportunity that far and away the best reward that this life has to offer is the opportunity to work hard at work worth doing." For me, doing advocacy on foster youth issues, on higher education, on all these issues that we've kind of touched on today, to me, that is work worth doing. And so again, I feel like it is a reward that I get the opportunity to do this work, that I get to know Michael, that I get to know so many of you who are listening out there, because I'd say the child welfare community is very small. So I would just say, this is work worth doing. And if you want to join us, please do. We can only get better if we're all working together. So, Godspeed to each one of you.
Thank you for that. Just such a powerful message and such true words. I just want to thank you guys for listening. I am coming close to the end of season 1. I have a few more special people coming along the way. And I'm looking at a place of transition and how to build upon this. So I just want to say I appreciate all the love and support that you guys have been giving me. I appreciate all the alumni that said yes, when I reached out to them, and it was like, yeah, no problem, I truly appreciate it. So just thank you, to the listeners, to the people that are supporting me. But what I want to say is something I say all the time. COVID is here. It is out here, and it probably really ain't going nowhere. I believe we're on our 4th, 5th variant, don't quote me on that. I may be exaggerating a little bit, but, if you are thinking about getting vaccinated or whatever, do your research. Don't procrastinate about it and get it done. If it's not for you, if it's not for you, I respect that. We all need to respect that. But take the right precautions to make sure that you are safe and that your family are safe, because by doing that, this big village, this global village, stays safe along with you. We have to start thinking about self-care for one, but also thinking about the whole. We are one big community, and we all got to take care of each other. It's not just, if I just do this or one person, no. I know that there are precautions lighting up, but be strategic, be strategic. If you feel like, hey, I still be put on this mask, put on the mask. Carry that small bottle of hand sanitizer with you. Go wash your hands an extra few times a day. You can't go wrong with that. You can't go wrong with that. Even before COVID, doctors and scientists have been saying, make sure you're washing your hands. Make sure that you're being precautious around people with colds and all these. All these are things that we should have been doing before COVID. COVID just heightened these things up. So just be, strategic in protecting yourself and your family. Last thing I'm going to leave with, is mental health is serious. Please take care of yourself. If you need help, please seek out supports and resources. We all, if you see somebody struggling, help them. And I'm not saying everybody has the capability to do this, but, homelessness is striking our nation like no other. There's always something. You can have a conversation with a homeless person. You can it's something that we can do to help each other out. So that's my little tangent. That's my little rant. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. You guys have a good night, good morning, good evening, good whenever you listen to it. Just let it be good and great. Thank you.